Of 2018, Amy Sherald's life turned upside down, but not in a bad way. That's when her portrait of former First Lady Michelle Obama was unveiled, causing a frenzy at the National Portrait Gallery in Washington, D.C.
It was exciting. I was happy that everybody was really eager to see it. She is an icon, and there should be lines to see her, and there should be lines to see this painting. Thanks for coming up.
Yeah. But Sherald has moved on to her next act. A new show at the Gallery Hauser and Wirth in New York City displays her latest batch of paintings. Those two have been a hit.
There were lines around the block.
Yeah, I didn't see that until afterwards, but I was shocked and excited that so many people showed up, and also just the diversity of the crowd, all ages, races. It was just really great to see that kind of energy in a gallery space where you normally assume it's kind of stuffy. It was a really down-to-earth.
Most people learned your name because you were painting one of the most famous women
Yeah.
in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And this exhibit, you're going back to what you've always done.
Well, I never left it.
You never?
Yeah, that's the assumption, but I never left it. That was one painting.
She prefers to paint what she calls everyday people.
I just see people and know immediately that there's somebody who I would like to make a painting of. Okay. I approach them awkwardly and pull up my cell phone. And
what's your
pitch? This
pitch?
is my website. Hi, my name is Amy Sherald. This is my website. I make paintings, and I would like to photograph you. It only takes an hour. You get $100, and you know what I mean. Like I try to make it seem as simple as possible.
She met this model on the subway, and this one through a friend. But regardless of where she meets her models, she paints all of them in gray skin tones.
I look at the gray skin, I think about it's the inside of the outside that you normally experience, like you're experiencing the inside, the more private life of Black people.
Adding to that intimacy, Sherald has placed the portraits at eye level.
His eyes are painted so they're able to meet your gaze. And I just think that's really important because it allows for the paintings to express their humanity.
The show also features two large-scale paintings, one inspired by this famous photo.
This is a real pivotal painting for me. I think it really takes my work into a different direction. And I oftentimes think about the history of America and construction, and I think that I'm processing those kinds of ideas about the meaning of my Americanness and my history in this country.
Plans are already in the works for all of these paintings to head to American museums. As for Amy Sherald, she says she plans to stick with her everyday models.
Hello, my most amazing artists. Today we will be making self-portraits in the style of the artist Amy Sherald. To do that, we're going to have a clear, transparent paper laid over top of your photograph that I took last week. You are going to be tracing on top of it with a Sharpie. You're going to be tracing something called the contour lines. These are the most important lines in your drawing. Think of yourself as a coloring book. You would only trace the insides shapes. You're not coloring anything in. So if I'm tracing my eye on the inside of my face, I'm making sure that I'm not coloring in things like my eyebrows or the insides of my eyes, just leaving those shapes. So even though it's really small, for my eyes I make an ellipse and then put a circle in the middle. You can keep flipping your paper very gently, but keeping it paper clipped into place so you keep tracing on that same spot. It might look a little weird at first with the photo underneath it, but I promise you when you take it off, you will be very impressed with yourself. Make sure you're tracing all of the outlines of shapes. So if it's your mouth, you're tracing the outline of your teeth, not every single little tooth. If you're tracing your lips, you're tracing the top lip and the bottom lip. Some lines in your face where the surface changes, like your smile lines, are going to be important. Same thing with your chin, your head, your neck, and your hairline. You have to have these lines that connect things to your body, like your hairline connects your hair to your head. Then if you have a few detailed lines, like say I have a braid in my hair, I can add a few of those lines to show that. but I'm trying to trace it with the least amount of lines possible that can really show where these changes are in my body. So I'm turning myself into like a comic book. In a comic book, you wouldn't see a lot of detail. You wouldn't see every little line drawn for the hair. You wouldn't see every little texture drawn on my sweater. I am just outlining the most important lines that I could not be me without. So if you have glasses, this would be tracing those glasses too. Any important detail, if you wanted to show yourself wearing the jewelry you were wearing that day, you can. When it comes to your shirt, if you were wearing something that was really complicated, like maybe a shirt that had a logo on it, and it seems a little bit too small to trace or too intricate, then you can simplify that and exclude it by just tracing the shape of your shirt, getting your neckline, getting your shoulders in there, your ears, if you have an earring, something like that, but maybe not every little detail. So I'm leaving out the texture of my sweater, but I am putting some lines for where my neck changed, and a couple lines there is going to show that it extends. I'm 3D, I'm not 2D, so I'm trying to make myself look as real as possible. Then when you're finished, you can compare it to your photograph and see what you might have missed. Notice I'm now using a thick Sharpie. I used a combination of the very fine point Sharpie and the thicker Sharpie. That way, I can do small details on the insides of my face with the thin Sharpie, and things that are bigger, maybe like my sweater, my shirt, with the thick Sharpie. That way, it'll go faster, and I have some variety in my artwork. After you're done tracing all your contour lines, sign your name on the front. You are only tracing on one side of this picture today. When you're done tracing and you compare it to your photo, see if you missed any of those important lines. Make sure you got your nose, make sure you got your eyes, your mouth. Notice some of the lines, like my nose, I only traced part of. I didn't continue my nose all the way up because it might have looked a little funny. Same thing with not tracing every tooth. So just the simplest lines that can show what that thing is. After I compare my photo to my drawing, if I have all my contour lines, I can move on. I took that page out of the packet, I signed my name, and then you have a third page in your packet. This is a grayscale coloring page. What this is actually not coloring page. We're going to be using paint to paint in our very own grayscale. You're going to write your name and class code on it, and then you'll see that grayscale, it moves from black to white. A grayscale is the color changes in a photo when there's absence of color. So meaning my black and white photo, it's going to be all black and white. But wait, there's a lot of gray in between there. So there's a lot of changes where I might have highlights or shadows, and I'm going to show those by mixing those colors. So you're making a grayscale challenge. The challenge is to use black and white to mix 11 different shades and tints. A shade is when you add black to a color to make it darker, and a tint is when you add white to a color to make it lighter. So you're mixing different variations or different amounts of black and white today to get lots of different colors of gray that you will be using to paint your photo next week, or to paint your drawing next week on the clear transparent paper. Notice I start with black and then I move towards white. I might add just a little bit of white each time as I move on. I'm mixing on a mixing palette. This is a piece of paper that's special to mix paint on. It's not going to absorb as fast as it will in your paper. I'm not mixing in the paint cups. I'm only mixing on this paint palette. I start with black and then I add a little tiny bit of white and try to mix that color to match the shade on the left. On the right here, you'll see I have blocks of color. They're rectangles, and on the left, it kind of fades. It's called a gradient. Where it fades, I can just kind of do my brush strokes a little bit looser and fade that color together. But on the right, I'm gonna try to outline in that rectangle and paint that exact color sample. By doing this, you're going to have an idea of which colors you need to mix to paint your skin color next week, because the artist Amy Sherald only uses those black and white and gray tones and grayscale to paint all of her portraits to show that everybody is equal. She takes away skin color in her portraits to really focus on the person and not focus on their skin color and judge them just because they were African American. She wanted everyone to be equal and really just focus on personality and things like maybe their face, their eyes, even their clothing, which is probably why the clothing and the backgrounds in her portraits were so bright. So that's why we're not going to be painting our clothing or background only our skin tones with the black and white to show that we are all equal and really just focus on what's inside, and also sometimes what we show our personality, what's on the outside, what colors we like, what we like to personalize ourselves with to show that. So when you're all done, you'll put your grayscale painting sheet on the drying rack because it does need to dry. Next week when you come in, we'll be using that grayscale mixing palette and black and white paint to paint the back of your painting to create a reverse painting. You're probably not going to get to this step today, and that's okay. You're going to be creating that reverse painting by painting on the back of it, which seems silly, but what that will do is it'll make it look really glassy on the other side and really, really nice. It's an awesome example of how we can make artwork to somewhat look like Amy Sherald's in the style. She's had a lot of practice with all of her drawing of her portraits and painting, but you're starting in just the 3rd grade, and I cannot wait to see what you create, amazing artists. All right, have a great time, and next week we'll talk about how we can apply those tints, shades, and grayscales to painting on your skin color. All right, have a great time, artists.